Hey, welcome back. So we're going to go on with another really important skill that you want to be able to manage within Microsoft Project, and that's really how to consider and implement change orders into your project plan. To set the stage for this, we're going to use an older save that we did. So I'm going to go back to where we're tracking our progress after the first status date update. So we're halfway through the first full week of the project on a Wednesday. And to make that make sense, I'm actually going to reset the date of the project to show that. So I'm just going to go into my project information. And in here, I'm going to set my current date so that it lines up with the status date of that setup. So that's kind of the scenario that we're going to play with when it comes to considering our change order that the client has asked us to offer options for. So let's set that date. So we're going back here. So we're in May 16, 17, 18, 19, Thursday the 19th. I think would be it. Oh, no, we got to go back. Thursday the 20th. There we go. There we go. So we've lined up our current date with our status date. So obviously, if we're going to make any changes, we can't go back into the past to make them. So this is where we are. And our client has asked us to consider a change order. So the situation is such that off the ensuite bathroom that we're renovating is actually, or behind it, is a storage room which is accessible from another part of the house. And the client figures that that storeroom would actually be better used as a walk-in closet off the ensuite. And so that would require us to change the access point. So instead of coming off the hallway, it's coming off the bathroom. We're going to have to remove all the shelves that are in there, strip out the flooring, remove some of the damaged drywall when we do all of that, and then put in the door, the electrical, the flooring, and some kind of a closet organizer. And that would then give the client this walk-in closet that they think they want. And of course, what they need to know before they approve it is how expensive it's going to be and what's going to cost them in time. So that's what we're going to try to do today, is we're going to try to provide that information to the client so that they can make a decision. Now, the client has promised me that they will make an immediate decision. If we're within their range of acceptable, then they'll make an immediate decision. So when I consider this, as far as the impact on the time schedule, I'm going to consider it for implementation anytime after today or starting today. Now, if you had a client that was not as quick, or you couldn't anticipate that they would be able to give you an immediate decision as to whether to go ahead with the change order or not, then you're probably going to have to build in some extra time before you would consider starting to work on the issues associated with it. So the big thing here is that we're going to implement we're going to establish some tasks that are going to be able to do this change order. We're going to establish the resources that are going to allow us to do it, but we want to track the change with respect to our current state within the project. So we have a baseline set, and we're also tracking. So we're getting variance. And what we want to do is we want to be able to save that, but actually set up our current situation as a new baseline, if you will, against which we're going to then compare our change order. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go in my project. I'm going to go set baseline, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my current baseline to one of the other baselines so that I can go back to it after. So you do that through the set interim plan, and so I'm going to choose my current baseline, and I'm going to save it into the number 10 slot. And by doing that, I have a backup, if you will, of the baseline, and when we're all said and done this, I'm going to bring it back to that primary baseline so that we can compare it. And so I'm going to say OK, and so that saves it into baseline 10. Now we can tell that because now when we drop this down, we can see we have the current baseline last saved 2605, right? And now we've saved it today. And so that's good. So having done that, what I'm able to do is I'm going to reestablish a new baseline based on where I'm at right now. And that's going to give us a comparison. So any changes from this point as a result of the change order will show variance relative to today. And so I'm going to set the baseline. I'm going to do it in the primary one so that we can do our comparisons to it. It's going to be for the entire project. And I'm going to say OK. Gives me a warning that I'm going to be saving over the existing baseline. And that's why we just backed it up. And so I can say yes to that. And so now if I very quickly go into my tracking Gantt, you can see that our baseline all lines up with where we are today. And if I were to bring up our cost sheet, you would see that we have 0 variance. So now any changes are going to be relative to the status that we were at when we started to consider the change order. So let's go back to the entry sheet and to our Gantt chart. All right, entry sheet. And what I need to do is I need to start by establishing the tasks necessary to do the work that's being considered. And so you get a couple choices. You can integrate this in somewhere where it makes sense into your project, or you can put it at the bottom. It doesn't really matter how you do it. Obviously, you're going to have to link in logically the successors and the predecessors so that it makes sense with respect to the work. There's some advantage from a organization perspective to have it at the bottom. You can have all your change orders down there. That's what I'm going to do today, but it really doesn't matter. So whatever works for you. And so I'm going to set it all up under a subtask. So eventually I can see it all rolled up to that subtask. And I'm going to call that subtask change order 001. And that's the walk-in. And then I need to establish the series of tasks that are going to form the walk-in. So I'll start with the removal. So I got to get rid of those shelves and the flooring and all that stuff. So I'm just going to removal existing storage and install the door from where it is into the hallway into the ensuite. We'll need to fill in the stud wall where we remove the door. We're going to have to do some electrical. And fix the drywall where we've damaged it or where we removed the door. We're going to have to do the floor tiling. And we're going to have to put in a closet organizer so it meets the needs of the client. And so with all that, I think that's really what we need to do. Now I'm going to keep this simple. So first off, what I need to do is I need to indent all of these tasks. So go to task, indent those. That makes that a summary task. And then we need to give some durations to it. And so I'm just going to make that 1 day. And move install door, probably half a day. The stud wall, again, half a day. The electrical is fairly minor. It's probably changing out the fixture, putting in a switch or moving the switch from where the other door was over to where this door was. So I'll just keep that rounded down. And drywall, that's probably going to take a full day. That's... And 2 days for the organizer. And so we're getting tasks, and now I have to set up the successors and the predecessors. So in my mind anyway, right now, because of the way this is all contained, I'm going to consider internal to the change order itself, but ultimately I'm going to have to integrate this back into the project itself. And so I look at these, they're all pretty much nose to tail. So if I just link them all up nose to tail, that'll get us started anyway, and we can make some changes from there if we need to. Now, before I start getting into the integration, what I'd like to do, because resources are going to be impacted, right? If I add resources to these, then that's also going to perhaps cause resource over allocations within my overall project when I go to schedule them. So we need to get all of the resources assigned. So I'm just going to bring up assign resources, and I'm going to go through this and assign resources to all of these. And I'm just going to jump ahead and get there so you're not wasting your time trying to watch me do stuff you already know how to do. So I've gone ahead and added in the resources. And you see right off the bat, kind of gives you the hint of some of the complications associated with this. We're automatically have an over allocation. Now keep in mind that we're still starting these in the past, right? So they don't really line up. So this isn't really meaningful yet, but it just foreshadows some of the complications that we might have. So with all of that done, the first thing that I can probably do, if I know I'm going to get a decision right away, as soon as I inform the client, then theoretically I could start work today. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't, right? Because the removal existing storage, unless there's a resource implication, certainly it fits in with the rest of my project. They're working on the stud walls in the bathroom proper. We can get into the storage room and start doing that work. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a constraint to this and say, you can't start before today, which makes perfect sense because there's no way that I can start before today. Now, so we see the constraint over in the indicator column. We also see that we do indeed have some resource over allocations as a result of what we've chosen to do. For me to do a full assessment as to the impact on the project itself, we're going to have to do a resource leveling on the change order and the main project wherever it's implicated. So I'm going to flip over to my leveling Gantt. I see it here. And I'm going to split my view, and down here I'm going to bring up my resource graphs. So I'm just scrolling down here so that I can see where my issues are. So obviously if I go to the floor tiling, I can now go down here and I see that it is my finisher which is causing me problems. I go up to drywall, it also is my finisher, and that doesn't surprise us because that's one of the challenges that we have. So if we start to look at our project, and we know that we're down here at floor tiling, and probably what I can do, if that's causing my issue, why don't we add a delay up here so that we also can line up our floor tiling. So we don't want to tile the floor in the closet before we tile the floor in the bathroom. We want to tie it all together. So why don't we bring that out? We'll call that 8.5 days. And that actually is going to line up our tiling in the bathroom proper with our tiling here. And now we still have an issue with the floor tiling because, of course, the finisher is going to do the paints and finishes. So probably what I need to do is just add a 1-day delay there. And that actually looks like it's getting rid of all of my issues. So I'll make my details go away. You can see the entire project, go to view, split it out, entire project. We have nothing in the indicator task or in the indicator column, which is great. We have a workable project. If we get the go ahead today, we can start right away and move forward with that. There's no issues. as far as space or behavior. Now I could do a deeper analysis of this and see if we can move it around to make a little bit more sense to get the same workers on site, consecutively and things like that. But for now, this is probably good enough that I can take this forward to my client and see if they're willing to do this, if this is something that they want to do. So what I need to do now is to really look at the variance to see what impact this has had on our project. And so the best place to do that, I'm just going to go down to our tracking Gantt, and I'm going to bring up our cost sheet within the tracking Gantt and look at the entire project. And so of course you see this was the baseline that we reset, and we see it starts to impact where we had to delay that 1 day here. Otherwise, it doesn't have too much of a time impact. It has a 1 day impact on the finish of our project because we're working largely in parallel. And then we can look and see what the cost is. Okay, so I just had to change my indents there. For some reason, I had put my change order subordinate to some of my other tasks, and I didn't want that because that doesn't properly reflect. And so what we see here is that our variance is 5,452. Now, why is this number slightly different than this number? Well, so that's the cost for all of this work in here, but that impact of that 1 day that we've delayed the entire project means that our project manager is working the extra day. And so the costs that have been assigned to them under the overall bathroom renovation task is showing up in here. And this is the value of using the sort of snapshot baseline in order to do this evaluation. It's quite possible that some of these other tasks might have incurred additional cost as a result of these, and they would all roll up to this total variance. And so now when I go back to my client, I can say, yeah, this is costing us $5,500 and a day delay to the project. And then I can figure out exactly, what we want to bill the client for it, and he can give me the go-ahead. And if he gives me the go-ahead, I'm going to have to be fast off the mark because I've actually planned it for work starting today. And so that's pretty good. So let's assume that I've gone to the client and the client has said, yep, I'm happy with that. That's about what we expected it would cost. Go ahead and do it. So what I need to do now is to establish my project so that I'm ready to move forward from this point moving forward. The first thing I need to do is I'm going to reset my baseline back to where I started. And so I'm going to do that by going to my project and set baseline. And I'm just going to do the reverse. I'm going to go back to the set interim plan. I'm going to choose my baseline 10, and I'm going to change it into my baseline. And I'm going to say OK. It's going to give me the same warning, and I'm going to say OK. And so now you see it brings in that baseline from the original, which is absolutely great. And the last thing I need to do, because of course if I want to track any variance to the change order, it's not going to track it right now because there is no baseline set for those tasks. And so what I want to do is I'm going to highlight the task, the new task that I've introduced, and I'm going to go up to my project, my set baseline, and in this case I'm going to do it for selected tasks, and I'm going to choose from subtasks into the selected summary tasks. And so any variation there is going to get rolled up into the change order subtasks. I may as well set that as the default for any future change orders that we want to do. And I'm going to say OK. And then it gives me the caution. I say, yes, that's fine. And so now you see these are all set baseline as scheduled today, whereas we haven't interfered with the original baseline that was underway previously. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think we're in a good spot. The client has given us the go-ahead. We've negotiated an appropriate price based on a well-informed understanding of the impact on the project, and we're ready to go. And the last video that I want to cover using this series of tutorials is really crashing the project and looking at how we're going to be able to make up some time for lost time or to meet a hard deadline that we need to make. So I hope you join us for that last tutorial, and we can nail this series of tutorials on the head and put this project to completion.